It's preparing a live stream. It takes a few seconds. All right, we are live. All right, what's up, guys? This is Lisa Lozano with Global Fight Talk, and I have a very special guest today. We have none other than Yvette Raposo. Am I saying your last name correctly?
You are.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on to Global Fight Talk. And hey, you know, we're doing a friendly interview. At least that's what I thought. And you said, let's go toe to toe. And I was like, okay, well, let's go toe to toe. Just got two female, you know, formal fighters who are very knowledgeable in the sport, in a man's world. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about your history before we even begin to let people know how much we know, right? So Yvette, you were a former boxer, and I read somewhere that you were a champion. And now, you know, you train. Do you still do training? Do you still train people? Yeah, yes. You do. Okay. And now you are the first female ring announcer in Canada. And man, that is so exciting. That is so exciting because not really, when you think of a ring announcer, you know, you think of, you know, men only doing ring announcement, you know, announcing. And I remember I did it probably like 5 years ago, and I wasn't even a ring announcer. I was just, you know, announcing the winner and interviewing the fighters in the ring. And that was very hard because people judge you. They judge you by how you sound or what kind of questions you're asking. And then being a female, you know, just a female, anything in a man's world, people look at you and they start asking, they start saying, oh, she don't really know, or what does she know? So let's talk about Yvette. How did you get started in boxing, first of all?
I dropped out of university twice. And thank you for having me, by the way, Lisa.
Yeah,
I love
definitely.
what you're doing. I'm so glad we found each other.
Yes.
And just when you think, you know, you found all the outlets in boxing, there's just so many outlets, which is amazing. And as I mentioned in one of my posts, I've interviewed other female fighters, but I don't think I've been interviewed yet by another female. So yeah, thank you.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, I dropped out of university twice. I knew I wanted to be a fitness trainer. I ended up landing a gig at this gym, which ended up changing my life. This gym happened to host and have an incredibly sophisticated boxing club and facility in the basement. So while I was upstairs learning my personal training and actually training for a bodybuilding show at the time, I was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. In order to go to the washroom downstairs, I had to pass the boxing facility, the boxing room. Right. And that's where it began. And then I just, you know, every time I passed it, I started to dip into the boxing room. And that's where my exposure began. Although I was and am a sports fan, and I was growing up, I was a massive, massive sports fan. Boxing never came across my radar until I was introduced to it from a physical aspect, from the physical side, from the, you know, to recognize the physical benefits of boxing. That's how it started. And then from there, when I was bodybuilding, I ended up cross-training using boxing training because it's the best conditioning ever in the world. Right. And then I decided I wanted to fight.
Well, how long were you in boxing? How long did you fight, and what were your accomplishments in the fight game? Did you start off as an amateur, then you moved your way up?
Yes. So I started off as an amateur. At the time when I was boxing, women were not invited to the Olympics. So the years I was competitive was the year 2000 to 99 to 2003. And so I fought at the amateur level, pretty much regional. So I was the Ontario champ. It got to the point where I started to I was just outclassing my opponents. I took it very serious, and I was fortunate to have amazing training and sparring. So I was just walking through girls basically in my region at the time, because other girls weren't, you know, they didn't have the resources also perhaps to take it as serious as I was. So Olympics was not an option. I could have gone national route, but I decided to go pro, got my pro license. And then from there, things started to go downhill more personally because of injury. So
Yeah.
ended up being herniated discs on my low back,
Oh,
and
wow.
kind of a blessing in disguise in a way, because then I was able to turn around and start my business teaching boxing.
Okay. How hard is it as far as a trainer goes to teach men, that men want to come in and they look like, I don't know if I want to learn from a female, just because you're a female and probably don't even know your background or your history. Across that?
No, actually, I love training men actually, and they if anything, they have more immediate respect for me perhaps than other women. Because,
Oh,
women are going to
wow.
question, they're going to compare, women like to compare.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's just something that occurs. Men, they love it. They're like, what? My trainer, she's a female badass, and they love it. They eat it up, and they respect what I've done in the sport. So it's an immediate connection in that way. But not to mention, I mean, any of my students, male or female, it's all about education, right? I believe a
Right.
lot in educating people about the essence of the sport, and that's where I begin with them, anyways.
That is awesome. When I used to box, I boxed for like almost 12 years. And I started off as a kickboxer, as an amateur kickboxer. And that was probably one of the hardest transitions for me, from going from a kickboxer stance to a boxer stance. And I had a very hard time transitioning, but I had some great amateur sparring partners at the time that were national champions, Golden Glove champions. I mean, you name it. And it was pretty hard because I wanted to kick sometimes because they were kicking my ass. So, but it took some time, and I finally got there. And as I got older, I started, athletes, we get injured a lot. And, I had a really bad back injury like you. So I was like, what do I do now? Like, I still love boxing. Boxing saved my life. And, so I fell into, journalism, writing about it, reporting about it, which I love your story. I love to support women fighters, women that do anything that's in the man's world. Now, I read that you not started off, I guess a friend of yours said, hey, won't you come, do some ring announcement for us? And you've never done it, but you just kind of fell into it. And now here you are, you're announcing at amateur fights now at professional level. How fun is that for you? And were you nervous the first time? Were you in the bathroom just like, no?
It's a whole other level of nervous than compared to fighting.
Mm-hmm.
The plus side, the benefit that I had was that I feel comfortable in the ring. It's like home to me. So that
Yeah.
was a benefit to me. I didn't have proper stage training presence. The only performance presence really that I had was from fighting and from my one bodybuilding show, for example. So was I nervous? Yeah, I put a lot of work into studying the craft of ring announcing, attending a lot of fight shows. I invested a lot in observing, learning from my mentors, people who ended up becoming my mentors. I took storytelling courses, improv classes, voice lessons. I wanted to do it right. I wanted to work my craft just the same way that I worked my craft as a fighter. So the way it happened was I was at an event, I was at a black tie affair in relation to boxing. And I ran into an old associate of mine who was a pro coach back in the day when I was training in the amateurs, and he would come by this gym that I was talking about earlier. His name is Everton McEwen. And him and I hadn't seen each other for like 10 years. So we were just catching up. And he was I found out, looking to get back into promoting amateur fights. And so we were just chatting, catching up. And then he just finally stepped back and he was like, you need a mic in your hand, and I am going to put that mic in your hand. And I was like, whatever, like, you hear talk, right? Although I highly respect, and I didn't doubt that Everton would follow through, and he did. And the next day we started planning the next fight together.
Right.
And we did 9 shows over the next 3 years at
Oh,
the amateur
wow.
level.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but we did it with a pro flair. Like
Okay.
he always loved kind of, because he's a pro guy. But he's also very grassroots, and he understands that we build from the amateurs, we build grassroots, and that's what we did.
with everything being shut down in this world, and it stops, people like us from doing what we love to do. What do you do on your spare time when you can't get in the ring? Do this.
Uh,
You interview.
Yeah, no, I can keep myself busy. I love learning.
Mhm.
I've been taking courses. I myself have had to totally pivot my business because I was teaching in gyms and doing private in-home training. So since that's not an option for me, I moved online. So I read a lot. I'm taking courses myself. I study a lot. I like writing, so I want to spend more time writing as well. And I'm planning my projects for next year, which is going to involve an online program where I talk a lot about the fighter's mindset and how human performance. I mean, the concept, the interest I have in boxing is beyond the combative nature of it. I'm
Yeah.
curious about the philosophy and the human potential, the stories that we can extract from these athletes, these warriors, these fighters. So yeah, so that's what I do. I read philosophy.
Wow, that's awesome. As fighters, a lot of fighters go through a lot mentally, going into the fight game. So as you talk about the philosophy behind it, a lot of people fight for different reasons. People fight because they need the money, which is not very the best thing to do. Other people fight because they need a way to get away from reality or whatever's going on, in their home or whatever. And then there are people that fight because they want to be world champions. But whatever the reason is, I always respect everyone for their decision when they step in that ring. One of the things that I hate more than anything, or dislike more than, I hate saying the word hate, the thing that I dislike more than anything is when you have your, fight fans that are out there, dogging people out because how they fought, or how they looked, or or whatever, and they just really don't understand what it takes to step in that ring, and the mentality that you have to even get in there. Because a lot of people deal with, I am so scared right now because I'm about to go in a ring and fight someone else who's trying to tear my head off as I'm trying to tear their head off. And they don't realize, the what can happen even after, you're taking those punches to the brain. So I respect anyone that goes in that ring, whether it's in the ring or in the cage, to be honest.
100%. Me too. I'm not a fan of people booing at a
Oh,
boxing
no,
match. I
no,
don't
no.
tolerate it. I don't tolerate that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you know what? Like I said earlier, we're going to do a friendly interview, but now we're going to go head to head. We're going toe to toe. Here we go. Ding, ding. Right now there's so many great female fighters that are out there, boxers. You have Clarissa Shields, who's making a name. Now, she's someone that had put women's boxing on the map, a few years ago. Not that it was gone, because it was there back in the days when, Layla Ali, you had Christy Martin, Mia St. John, people like that. And Clarissa brings it back because she's a Olympic, gold medalist, and now she's undefeated, and now she's trying to take over MMA. And the thing that I love and I don't like is that people only sometimes recognize one female fighter, right? Just one. And there's so many other great female fighters out there that they don't show on TV. They don't pay as great. They don't recognize them. So I want to talk about, the great female fighters that are out there that they don't get to see on TV. Even when it's a champion fight, there's still the undercard versus being a co-main event or a main event. And I've had this conversation with plenty of people where I will go toe to toe with that. Female fighters just don't sell like men do. And if they did, well, maybe they would be, main event card, headlining on HBO Showtime, or whatever. It's just that they don't sell, which I don't agree. Because if you think about MMA, Dana White never agreed about putting women in the UFC until he found Ronda Rousey, and he went behind her. He promoted her until
She
she
found
was,
him, as far as I know. She
yeah,
found
no, no,
him.
she found him, and he denied her at first, and then she kept on and kept on. She was very persistent, and he started promoting her, and I think that's what they need to do as far as boxing. What do you think about the good old sport of boxing that don't promote women?
I think about this a lot, and I have a lot to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there's a couple of things going on here. Boxing is a very traditional sport,
Very.
and there's a lot of habits that occur in boxing, and it's just habitual that when you put on a boxing show or you think about a boxing show, you think about men going at it. It's been such a fight inside the ring and outside of the ring for women to gain recognition. And even, you talk about women wanting to be paid the same, equal pay for equal play. But how about starting off with even just equal promotion, equal levels of promotion? When people say, oh, people don't want to watch women's boxing, I'm like, how do you know? Because as you said, they don't have the opportunity or the access to watch women's boxing. How many times have you been to a fight? I know how many times I've been to a fight, amateur and pro. And not just in this country, because I've traveled to fights around the world. I've been to 3 international conventions. I've been to, I've crossed over to the States many times. How many times was the female fight the fight of the night? And that's when the fans get to connect with the female fighters and get to actually watch for themselves. That's where they can ask for more. But if they're not seeing us, the fans, that's a whole untapped market that you're not even looking at, that you're not even allowing through the gates. We have a massive untapped market in our sport that we can have access to if we just put a little bit more long-term thinking, a little bit more of a strategy behind the way we promote our sport. And we have to come together. And I told you I have a lot to say about this.
Yeah.
We
No,
have
go
to come
ahead.
together. We have to come together to accomplish this. And we need more long-sighted, we need a bigger vision so that we can all win, so that we can all raise each other up. And that untapped market is not just other females that we want to invite into the sport to buy tickets to sit. What do promoters want? They want bums in the seats. They want eyeballs on the screen. Really? Okay. So let's put together a strategy where when people can make an affiliation with a female fighter, a warrior, an athlete, that's when they can make a connection with the person, the fighter, the person inside the fighter. And that's the emotional connection that we're looking for. And those are the people that are going to carry our sport. It's the fans.
Yeah, definitely.
So when
No.
you limit what you show, you're not reflecting society.
I totally agree with you 100%. I don't want to say I blame the fans for not knowing, right? Not knowing, but I do blame the promoters for not promoting, right? You have a lot of former boxers who are promoting now and should understand how hard it is to get to that level, and yet they seem to forget the female fighters. You have Oscar De La Hoya, who's now promoting. I think he has one female fighter. She's out of Houston, Texas. Marlene Esparza. He promotes Marlene Esparza. You have Mayweather Promotions. He's promoting Ava Knight. Ava Knight, who is a boxer and MMA fighter for Bellator. Top Rank. I haven't seen anybody on Top Rank as far as female fighters goes, but I don't understand why there's such a huge disconnect from boxing with the female fighters when there's a huge connection with MMA and female MMA, a huge connection.
Well, listen, Dana White did it right. And he made that affiliation with the female fighters. He put Ronda Rousey's, for example, her story in the forefront and gave people a chance to connect with her story. It's all about storytelling.
Right.
And
you're absolutely right.
it's all of our jobs. And yes, the promoter is the final say. They're the ones who are going to make the decision to say, okay, let me put these girls up there. But we have to continue showing up. We have to continue making noise and chirping. And we have to continue promoting ourselves and each other so that they can see, when I was fighting, and I've been teaching for more than 15 years. And when I started getting into ring announcing, luckily, I saw the impact that educating people on boxing had. My followers were from outside of boxing. They were attached to my story and
Hmm.
they became boxing fans. I was selling tables at the fights where I was ring announcing. And that's how we're going to kind of come together. And if we can, as a community, share these stories and what each other is doing and build up the essence of the sport and why we're so in love with the sport and what attracts us to the sport, we have to educate people on what that is.
Right.
So promoters, if they could see that, at this point, I would say you would be really smart as a promoter to, you look at, like, Clarissa Shields is doing it for herself. She's getting on interviews. She's getting her voice out there. She's speaking. Katie Taylor's quiet. Katie Taylor's quiet.
I love Katie Teller. Oh my God, she is a straight killer. I love the way she fights. I love the way she carry herself. She allows her fighting to speak for herself. I just wish she was a little bit more vocal. And I think right now, at the time, she was ahead of Clarissa as far as pay goes. She is getting paid, and that's going to lead up to my next question right quick. Before we get there, I do want to ask this. I don't know if you ever heard of Invicta MMA, which is an all-female organization. Now, I love what Invicta does, right? They promote nothing but female fighters, which is which a lot of UFC gets their talent from Invicta. And I'm curious as to why no one has ever decided, hey, I'm just going to throw an all-female card and start promoting it like how Invicta does, and hopefully like these big time organizations like Top Rank and TMT, Mayweather Promotions, Oscar De La Hoya, and so forth. I'm like, oh, I want her, and I'm going to grab her, and I'm going to bring her to the big league. But like you said, we have to keep chirping, we have to keep promoting, and I think there are some boxer promoters that have tried to promote nothing but female fighters, but I've rarely hear about it, and it's not seen anywhere else. So I just don't know how we can make a all-female boxing promotion, um, like a Top Rank, or like those other bigger promoters out there, and fans would tune in and watch it, because I think female fighters, man, when they fight, they go at it, whether it's skillful or a straight dog fight. You're going to be entertained either way.
100%. We had actually, right before the pandemic hit, I was working with a promoter called Fight Social Club, and we had it scheduled for April 23rd, an all female pro fight card, the first ever of its kind in Ontario, the region where I'm
Hmm.
from in Canada. And it was scheduled. We had the scheduled. I had
Oh, okay.
I had an interview with a national broadcast outlet, and I had talked about it. It's called Global News, and that was, and then the pandemic hit. So, the idea is being tossed around. It just takes somebody with the confidence to do it, and the
Hmm.
understanding, and the understanding in how, what Everton McEwen said to me, who's the gentleman who was the first man to give me that opportunity to step in the ring as a ring announcer. A couple of years later, I asked him, I said, by the way, like, why me? Why did that happen? And he
Hmm.
said, well, I wanted to do something different. So why is it that just putting a female ring announcer in the ring, why is that doing something different? I want to see the day where that's not so different, where it's
Right.
more normal. So I want to see the day where, as you say, yes, we do have an all-female fight card, and the fans in the stands are a mixture of both female and male people who appreciate a good fight. Because again, the women come at it, whether or not they feel like they have something more to prove, because we have to overcompensate for the lack of exposure. you're going to see
Right.
good fights.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, we keep talking about Clarissa and Katie Taylor, but there's a lot of other female boxers that are out there that didn't, that don't really get to, we don't get to mention. And I think one of them is Ava Knight. She was killing it, and she stopped boxing because they don't promote female fighters, and so she went from boxing, and she's a 3-4 time world champion, and she went from boxing to MMA, Bellator, and that's what she's doing. She goes back and forth if there's an opportunity for her, but she's doing MMA. You have Heather Hardy, another one. She's now doing she dabbles in both. Mainly, she's been, I think she had like 3 or 4 fights in Bellator, but those people don't hear about like Heather Hardy or Shelly Vincent. They call her Shalito. She's out from the East Coast, New Jersey, I believe. I mean, just different fighters that that's sad that we don't get to hear about. I know what they did to make these fighters, um, female fighters, where they promoted them, like Mia St. John. She had a great promoter. She had a very great promoter. You have Christy Martin. She was headlining. She was, and people knew who she was, and people were excited to watch her. You have Layla Ali. You have Ann Wolf. You have
Lucia
who else?
Riker.
Lucia Riker, who is my favorite fighter of all time, is Lucia. I love Lucia Riker. You have those people. What happened? What do you think happened from that generation to this generation? I don't know. Is it because the competition level? Because even the competition level, it was the same as far as a lot of female fighters being out there, but they were getting. Can you hear me?
You just cut out there for a sec,
Oh,
so
okay.
I lost that last 2
Oh no,
sentences.
no. What do you think happened from that generation back then, from from Christy, Mia, and Layla, and the generation now that we don't, that the promotion had just kind of declined?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I'd never really thought about that. I think in general, boxing took a bit of a back seat. I mean, it's always been humming along the way with its hardcore fans, but once MMA came into the picture and UFC and the promotion of that, I think that kind of in general shook the ground, shook the foundation of boxing. So I don't know if that's the timing that you're speaking of, where
Mm-hmm.
women weren't, suddenly they dropped off. Maybe it's because, okay, so they tried the woman thing, because it's so
Yeah,
traditional, such a male dominated perspective. And, change takes time. Change takes a lot of time. And it's going to take more time for people. I made a post once, is boxing ready for a female ring announcer? That's a big question. Is boxing ready for a very traditional male dominated role with a deep voice, a tuxedo? Is boxing ready for that?
right,
Because change takes time. So maybe that was like a bit of a, we were surfacing, even Jackie Frazier had come out, and that was the 90s, right? That was the late 90s, early 2000s, and women's boxing was, but what you're seeing now, I think what happened is we went back to the gym,
mm-hmm.
and now you're seeing women come out and finely tuned. They're getting more attention earlier because we need the attention at the club level. And now you're seeing the talent really come out. And you see the difference when you get attention in the gym, when you get the sparring, and when you get the development in the gym, you see the difference in the quality. And that's what we're
Right.
seeing now. So the girls went back to the gym. Okay, we got to see them start boxing from an earlier age. You talk a lot to women who got into boxing, like myself. I was 19 when I got into boxing. Now you have someone like Clarissa Shields. She started at 11, so that's
Yeah.
good. That's
Oh yeah, that's
promising.
always good. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So let me ask you this. What is your all-time favorite fight? If there was a female fight out there that you thought about and I was like, oh, this should have been on TV, or, something you probably saw on YouTube, or, that it was shared on social media. What female fight do you think you can be like, oh, that was a hell of a fight?
Wow. Okay. Anytime, all time you're talking?
E- oh, from the generation in our generation or the new generation now?
Okay, well, I'm going to talk to the new generation because that's what's more fresh on my mind. Although I love Lucia Riker, she is
Yeah.
definitely one of the role models that I looked up to, and I was looking forward to meeting this past summer at the IBHOF, the International Boxing Hall of Fame, where
Mm-hmm.
she is being inducted, as well as Christy Martin and two other women who I am very excited about. Anyways, so she was just beautiful to watch. But the fights that stand out for me right now, Amanda Serrano versus Heather Hardy. What a war.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What a war. That was
Yeah,
about a
that
year
was
ago.
yes, yes.
The
She
Clarissa,
is killing it. She is definitely. I love Amanda Serrano and her sister also, who's also a fighter as well. And I just love everything about her. She's also undefeated as an MMA fighter as well. So she's doing great things. But the fight that I want to see, and they were going to make it, but I don't. I think it had to do with money. That a man, don't quote me on this, but I think Amanda wanted more money. Was the fight between Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano?
yeah,
That is
everybody
the
wants to see that fight.
yeah. I was just like, man, if that happens, that needs to be on TV where people can actually see, because Amanda's a dog. Although she's a boxer, I think she's a boxer pusher. She's in your face. Katie Taylor, she loves to box. She loves to use her angles. I think their styles will make man it's fireworks if they ever meet. And that is one fight that I do want to see. But what do you think about the lack of competition with someone who's undefeated in the fight game, and there's really not that many female fighters coming in? Because there was a recent fight. Oh, I just my brain just went dead, from a girl from California who fought this girl who really didn't even have no fights, and she's undefeated. She's a world champion, and
Oh no,
she
don't tell me. Miranda Atkins. This was the first female fight that they showcased after once the pandemic hit. They put it's Espinoza.
Espinoza, Marlene. No, it started with the M. I know who you're talking about, but she it was over like in 10 less than 30 seconds.
Seven punches. Seven
Yes,
punches.
yes,
So
yes.
this is definitely one of the beefs I have. So that was, first of all, very careless, obviously. I think it's obvious now. We can see how obviously careless that was. And what happened in that fight, I actually wrote a big post about it. I spent a solid 3 days
Hmm.
commenting and responding, because when you make a post that makes a statement, then you get feedback, and a lot of
Right,
it comes from sometimes it's private messages, and then it starts conversation, which I think is important.
right.
But Miranda Atkins was put in there by her promoter, who was her apparent ex-husband, and she
Exactly
was undefeated up to that point. I believe it was 5-0, but we don't know who her opponents were. Apparently they were just handpicked
who they fight.
opponents,
Exactly.
and we really didn't know the experience that she had in the ring. Well, we found out. We found out as soon as the bell rang, that she was not prepared to defend herself. That woman was not prepared to defend herself. So my beef with this, I understand you want the fight to go on, the show must go on. My beef with this, and this is, what I think about particulars when it comes to the image that we present. I think about particulars when you think about how we promote our sport. And when you
Right.
have the first women's fight coming out of the gate after the pandemic hit, and it is that I'm trying to be nice here, and
I
it
know
was
you
that
are.
display, of incompetence. And
Hmm.
that's what you want to show women's boxing is? This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is what you want to display that women's boxing looks like. That's the problem. You're not doing the sport any favors by just putting on the show for the sake of it, because you wanted to see through the contract.
You know, one of the one of the things that angered me was, yes, that, you know, you're putting a world champion against someone who's undefeated, but again, we don't know the records of the women that she fought to you know, to become undefeated. Um, and then, like you said, that you decided to display this on TV, and then people already having a hard time female fighting, and they see something like this. Now, one of the things that I had, you know, a conversation or a debate, let's put it like a debate about, is that men do it all the time. But when women do it, it's just like, that's why I don't watch female fighters when we do it. You know what I'm saying? And it's okay for the men to cherry pick their opponents and destroy them within, you know, with a one two punch, and that's it. And then that's okay. We move on and we keep watching it. Why is it
Well,
so different?
it still doesn't make it right. And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily different. I've spoken up about this, you know. Listen, most recently, let's talk about Jake Paul versus Nate Robinson.
Oh
Nate
God.
Robinson shouldn't have been in there. I don't believe that was not a good depiction of is this what you want people to believe the sport should look like?
Right.
So
Right.
similar situation. He couldn't defend himself, really. And you know, this is, you're teaching the fans that this is what they want to see. We teach the fans with what we show them.
I think the fans don't really. I think that I might bite myself, you know, if I say this, but I think fans only know one type of style of boxing, and that's going toe to toe. When they don't realize there's so many styles of boxing, and they want to see the Mexican style that stand in the middle of the ring and just hit each other with no head movement, no footwork, you know, not utilizing the jab, nothing. Let's just go toe to toe, and that's what the fans want to watch. Now, Jake Paul versus Nate Robinson, whose fault do you really think? Is it really Jake Paul's fault? Is it Nate Robinson's fault? Nate did sign the contract. He did say, I am going to fight him. He had to go pro because he is a professional NBA player. So he had no other choice but to go pro. So whose fault really is it? I mean, at the end of the day, they both signed the contract, and Nate thought in his heart that he was going to win, and he was well prepared. And he stepped in there and realized this is a whole different ball game. Like, I don't know what I was doing, and now here I am knocked out, and people are making memes about me and making fun of me. Who do you blame? You know, who's to blame? Who makes these fights?
Well, I think there's different layers. It's always deeper than just pointing our fingers at one person. You know, same thing I thought about with the Miranda Atkins fight. It was like, you know, do we blame the commission? Do we blame her coach? Do we blame the promoter? Do we blame the matchmaker? So, okay, is that going to solve anything? Possibly. When you call people out for these decisions that they're making that affects
Mm-hmm.
our sport, that affects
Mm-hmm.
the image and the reputation of our sport, then yeah, is it time to call people out? You know, there's different doorways that fighters have to get through in order to get center ring. So they have to get past the promoter, they have to get past their own coach. So it starts with the coach, you know, who put you in there, who had the confidence in you to believe, the confidence and the experience as a coach to trust that you're putting this person in there on live worldwide TV on PPV. Okay, that's one problem. The promoter, that's another problem. I understand why Tyson was co-promoting. I know he was doing it with Triller. And, you know, here's the thing. Sometimes people get carried away with the entertainment aspect of boxing. Boxing is a business after all. It's the
Mm-hmm.
entertainment business after all. And to
Right.
your point, you know, we think that fans just want to see two warriors battle it out and they want to see knockouts. But again, it starts with education. And, you know, and this is going to take literally sitting side by side. And I do this at the fights. I sit side by side. I help, I educate, I show them, see that, see what just happened. This is the purpose of the jab. This is the purpose of a body shot. This is when you chop the tree down. And this is the lingo that we use and all that. It's going to take a certain level of education to help people
Right.
understand what they're seeing. You know, I'm
No,
still trying to teach my parents the game of baseball because I grew up loving baseball,
right.
and they don't get the sport, but I try to teach them the game, the strategy, and they're still learning. But so, who do we blame for the Jake Paul and Robinson? You know, we blame society. Let's blame society. How about that? Because is this what, you know, that promotion, that show, that PPV made $80 million in PPV revenue.
And not one female fighter on there.
So here's the issue. So here's the thing. Not one female fighter. I counted two women entirely as part of the whole production. And one of them was Mike Tyson's friend, Christy Martin, who was a judge.
Mm-hmm.
The other woman I saw was in the ring, and she was not an official, but she was, you know, somebody who was working behind the scenes. I counted two women entirely on that production. It didn't even cross their mind to represent women. It didn't even cross their mind. They were just thinking about money.
And that's the problem. They don't think females can sell it, and that's why they had Jake Robinson. Jake tube sensation, and he brought a whole different. I don't know. Can you hear me? Because my internet's going. Okay.
Yeah.
He brought a whole different, fan base to the game, and and as far as a promoter goes, I can understand if I were to ever promote a fight, you would want to bring people, have people fighting for you who can make you money. So I get that part, I get it, but why not take a risk on someone, and promote them as well. And before I move on, it was killing me not to say her name. It was Sinisa Estrada. Estrada, that was her name. It was killing me. Like, what is her name? I cannot move on before that. But I don't understand. I hate that there was no female fighters on there. Again, it's just something. Hopefully, the next 5 years that you'll start seeing more, because there are a lot of more female fighters out there that are that are training. You have little girls now, and their dream is to be, to go to the Olympics or to become pro. Little girls now have a visual of these female fighters now, like Clarissa Shields, even though a lot of people, don't like her attitude or the people she hangs out with, and they're like, oh, she needs to be more ladylike. But damn, like, seriously, let's think about this. It's damn if you do, damn if you don't. She's trying to promote herself. She may be going the Mayweather way or Mike Tyson back in his days, just calling out people or whatnot. Whatever she was doing, whatever she's doing, look where she's at because of that. People are talking about her.
For sure. I want to say one more thing about back to, and I do understand about the boxing as a business and making money. And I understand why promoters do what they do. For example, putting this YouTube fighter on against an ex-basketball player. All I'm asking those of us in the sport who can make these decisions to just be more thoughtful. Just be more thoughtful for the long game.
Yeah.
And you do it anyways, sure, throw on one women's fight, just be more thoughtful about it, about your reach. And if we can be strategic, once again, listen, boxing is a game of strategy. Why can't we be strategic with the way that we present ourselves and promote the sport?
Yeah.
So I'm just asking promoters to be more thoughtful. And that includes tapping into the untapped market who do want to understand the sport for what it is. There's so many beautiful aspects of the sport. And when you understand it and appreciate the art of it, that's when you have fans for life, like us.
Yeah, definitely. I hope one day that it will happen, that we will see more female fighters on the card, except, instead of having one female fighter, having two or three on the card. UFC is doing it, Bellator is doing it. They're having more than just one female fight on the card. They got people, they got female headlining. They got three or four female fighters on there, whether it be on the undercard or whether it be pay per view. I just hope that these boxer promoters are really trying to, they could take a page out of Dana White's page and see that if you do, promote your fighters, your female fighters, that you can have a superstar, on your team. You can really have a superstar. I don't like the fact that sometimes females think they have to show their stuff to get seen. And whatever you do to have to do it, hey, to each his own. But I think that's probably one of the things that um, people think that's all females are good for, is to watch because they're beautiful or they're sexy and or whatever. But there are a lot of beautiful women that do box. A lot of beautiful women that
Oh
box.
yeah.
So, but I am so I can go on and talk about fighting. I can talk about MMA. I could talk about boxing, and I wish we had another hour to talk. But Yvette, it has been such an honor to have you. I'm gonna have to call you back, and we're gonna have to do this again, and have more time and tap into something even more deeper, because I know that there's more stuff that you and I can talk about when it comes to the fight game itself, not just female fighters, but the fight game itself, period. Because
Yes.
there's a lot of great fighters, there are out right now, even far as far like the big Earl Spence and versus Danny Garcia fight that just happened. I mean, the fight that happened last night. I mean, it's just a lot of great fights are out there, and you and I could probably just talk, and we can go head to head with boxing, but we don't have enough
I have a
time.
hard head. I don't know if you want to do that. Toe to toe, I have a hard head.
Yeah, I'm older, so I don't know. My brain's kind of soft. No, but thank you so much. Let everybody know that who's watching, where they can find you, and follow you on your career path and everything that you're doing in Canada right now.
Thank you. Follow me. Probably best place is Instagram at
Mhm.
Yvette Raposo. And yeah, I'm taking new angles around the sport. I'm going to continue ring announcing. Right now, fighting in Canada is still on hold. Our fighters are going across the border to find fights right now. So due to the pandemic, we're still not active in Canada. So I don't know when or what that will look like in the future, but I always stay ring ready. So
Yeah.
Instagram is the best place to find me. I'm always posting boxing philosophy. And, one of my taglines is think like a fighter, live like a champ.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
one more mention, I want to give a shout out to FMF Boxing, who, if you want to stay up to date on
With
female
female fighters,
fighting,
he's the one. He's the
follow
one.
Mike FMF
Yeah.
Boxing on Instagram at FMF, and he does a really good job. He's the biggest female fight fan in the world, as
Yes.
far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, he is definitely. He knows his stuff when it comes to female boxers. He
Yeah, and he
is.
knows these fighters personally. He reaches
Yes.
out. Him and I were chatting just the other day, and he gets the stories. He gets our stories, and he gets it. He
Yeah.
gets it. So, all the best to him. I know he has his own battles right now. So,
Yeah, definitely.
thank you for your time, and I'll continue following and watching what you're doing, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that's how we connected, because you shared one of my posts. And I was like, okay, who's this lady that shared my post and is sharing Global Fight Talks post? And I was like, oh, well, I gotta have her on the show. So yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up. That's the other thing I want to mention here for whoever's listening. And, if you're thinking about how can you contribute, like we all love our sport so much. And it just amazes me how we don't share each other's stuff enough.
Right.
And instead of constantly taking from the sport, give back and contribute. So And contributing is just sharing each other's stories, because that's how we grow, really. And it always amazes me. It's called social media for a reason. It's meant to
Right.
be social, and
Right.
it's an outlet to share. And you want to grow together, you want to grow your sport and grow your pocketbook, if that's all you're interested in, then share what everyone's doing, because that's what's going to help us stay cohesive and continue growing, because that's what we
Right.
want.
Definitely. Well, for everyone that tuned in YouTube Live, this was my very first time going YouTube Live. And so Yvette was my first guest to go YouTube Live. So I'm excited. And what better way to introduce, Global Fight Talk YouTube, live page. For those that are watching, follow us on all of our social media sites. We have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, subscribe. We're on every social media platform, Twitter. You can find us, at Global Fight Talk. Again, continue to watch us, share this post, like this post. Let's get these views up. Yvette, go follow Yvette as well. I just made a new friend in the fight game. I'm so glad that we follow each other and we can, communicate. We can talk about fight or whatever it is. But again, thank you so much and tune in to next time. Peace.